the Manage to Win podcast. Brand new in many ways. In one way, especially that I'm on the podcast. Hello, my name is Jeff Russell, and I'm David's son. I'm sure many of you are familiar with David. And I'm going to be on the podcast, chiming in, providing a new perspective, providing a different perspective. As some of you know,
chiming in. I thought you were doing the whole podcast. I thought I was chiming in.
Yeah, I know. You would like that, wouldn't you? Then you wouldn't have to do anything. So in case anybody doesn't know us, Manage to Win, we provide consulting and training on hiring, developing, and managing and retaining great employees. Do you want to add to that, Dad?
I mean, that's the gist of it. Basically, our focus is leadership and culture. So how to have a thriving culture. We basically take people who realize, oh, I've got leadership attributes, but I don't have any leadership skills. They're basically a bad boss, which I was decades ago, and teach them how to be more systematic in their leadership so they can enjoy themselves more, achieve more, and have more fun with the people they're working with. So
much better than the one I gave.
No, I thought it's basically the same thing. Embellished a little bit.
So Manage to Win, I wanted to give some background for the first. I've got a number of items here that we're going to go through. The background of Manage to Win as a company. We've been around since 2008, and now you know what we do. So I think that's good enough. What do you think?
No, that's fine. Yeah. Well, actually Manage to Win. I mean, I started in the consulting thing in February of 2006.
Oh, okay.
So I've been in the computer industry for 36 years. Most of our clients, like 95% of our clients are managed service providers or people involved in the industry, but we do work with people in other industries, and that's been successful too. So it's been about a 12-year run now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's moving on to year 13. Lucky 13.
Yeah. I'm not sure everybody would call it that. But yeah, we'll take it. We'll take it. We got to look on the bright side, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And would it be called the computer industry still, or is it now the IT industry?
I don't know. You get into IT, it's more like Fortune 500, large corporations. Really, the majority of our market is entrepreneurs who went out and started a business to provide outsourced IT services. And they were either great tech or they were a great sales guy, typically, or gal, and want to go start their own business. And then they're in it for a while, whether it's 1 year or 20 years, literally. And they realize, man, this isn't any fun. My employees are a pain. And so they come to us to try to figure out how to make that work. And one of the challenges for them is to realize that their employees are a pain, but it's their fault. So we teach them how to overcome that. So it'll work.
So it doesn't matter whether it's called computer or IT. It's pretty much the same thing.
Not really. The people we work with provide outsourced help desk and project assistance for implementing information technology in a business, nonprofit, or government agency.
And that's just the primary industry that our clients are in. I can name a few other industries that some of our clients have been in off the top of my head, but I don't want to make any mistakes. Can you?
Don't worry about it. This is a podcast, right? You can edit it.
I can edit it. That's right. I have the power.
Yeah, that's right. It's under your control.
Well, from what I know, there's two that come to mind. One in the food services industry.
Yeah,
that we worked with. I really liked. I'm sad their dumplings are not available in Whole Foods anymore.
Yeah, me too. Particularly the wheat ones. They were awesome.
They were so good. And now the ones I get at Vaughn's, they're terrible. I can't believe I even buy them. Yeah. And then there was another one that you worked with at least one other accounting firm, right?
I worked with accounting firms. We work with a company that makes supplements right now. We've got,
that's right.
I think, real estate organization, insurance company. I mean, we have a variety of, a lot of professional services, but of course the dumpling company, I mean, they were like 250, 300 employees. We worked with them for a while.
Yeah, they're a big company.
That was great. We still do some work with the founder who moved on and now does ginger ale products out of Brooklyn. So, that's great. But what we teach about leadership and culture really works in any type of organization. We're
Right.
not limited there. The only reason we have so many clients in the managed services business, the IT managed services business, is that's my background where I've been for 36 years. So it's kind of been there, done that. When they bring up their specific business issues, I understand it because I've been there.
Right. That's exactly what I wanted to get at, was kind of if somebody wants to know anything about us, this is what we do, and these are the markets we're in, but we're not necessarily limited to working with companies in the IT space or the computer space. It just happens to be something that we're very familiar with, and so it falls into a niche for us. But the things we work on with those companies apply to any company.
That's right. That's right. We just, we are really the only company in the IT managed services space that provides strictly leadership and company culture consulting. So what happens is, we get full,
Right.
and that's why we're doing things like Dave's Charm School, the soft skills training, so people can access that without me having to invest my hours to help them improve the soft skills of their people, because we've got it as recorded trainings, and then you put together the exams and the different things that help them use that. And then the talent assessments, more and more. Sanal, who's on our team out of Reno, Nevada, she runs that more and more. And so that frees me up and we can help people, although I'm still involved sometimes in interviewing the candidates. And then we have the Certified Leader Program, which does take my time, but it's more focused, and we only limit it to 10 people. So that's people that get into that, are able to get a good value there of working with me and working with a group of peers.
Great. The next item I want to talk about would be the format of the podcast. So with the No Bad Bosses podcast, in case anybody's not familiar, we did the No Bad Bosses podcast, which was just David speaking with another guest, and it was one-on-one. It was this style, it was interview style. And with this podcast, it's going to be pretty much the same, I imagine, except I'm going to be here on camera, pretty scary, and we're going to be talking to a guest at the same time. So we're going to have to kind of vary our conversation styles. To be honest, I'm a little bit I'm wondering how that's going to turn out.
It'll be great.
All right. Well, let's roll.
Yeah, I mean,
good to me.
You're better looking than I am. Stronger guy to look at, so it'd be great. And you've been working with me for off and on. I know this stint of working with me has been what, 5 years?
Yeah, 2013.
Yeah, so 5 years, and you worked with me before that. So you have a good handle on what we do. So, and you have good questions. You usually approach things from a different angle than I do, and I think the audience will really appreciate that. And plus, are you going to be posting who we're interviewing in advance in case people want to send in questions in advance?
Yes. Rex Frank just asked me about that. He asked me for a blurb that he could include in their newsletter, something that in advance of the podcast episode. And I had to tell him, I'm not really sure how to do this because it's not like a webinar that people can register for. Yeah. But I did tell him, I did give him a little description that he could include and let him know that it's on January 18th. Everyone here listening to this podcast can know Rex Frank will be with us. He's from C-Level Ops, and he knows a lot about operations in the MSP space. And so I gave him a little bit of text to describe the episode and told him in the future that we'll hopefully be broadcasting live and we'll have events lined up so that people can see who's coming up and who's going to be on the podcast and learn a little bit about them before it happens.
Yeah, that might be fun. I mean, you might want to really work on that from the get-go or pretty close to it as far as emailing out to our newsletter list too, of saying we're going to have these people coming up. You want any questions answered asked of any of them? And, we may get a few questions or may get a lot, but that helps people participate. So I think it'd be a good idea.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
My next item was, I wanted to ask, why are we doing this podcast? What are our goals for the podcast? So we started the No Bad Bosses podcast at kind of my recommendation because I was really enjoying listening to some other podcasts and said, hey, you have a lot of friends that you could talk to, a lot of business leaders. You've been a public speaker for a long time now. and wanted to do that. I was curious. My goals for the podcast are to kind of explore not only the topics that you know very much about, the people that you're very comfortable talking about, and me getting comfortable with that, but also to uh, add that other voice in there and see if I feel like a lot of the No Bad Bosses podcasts was at a higher level. It's very leadership and management focused, No Bad Bosses. And there were a lot of questions that I found myself wanting to ask as you were talking with these business leaders as um, a lower level kind of guy. So my goal for the podcast is to kind of continue with the same vein of questions that we had before, but also add in a few more and kind of round it out a little bit and provide a little bit longer show with a little bit more in depth and really get the knowledge out of these guys that we were doing before and to have some fun conversations.
Well, I think the purpose of the podcast stays the same. It's basically to get insights from people who have had some level of success on what's worked for them with leadership and culture and other things. We had a nice mix in those 50 episodes of No Bad Bosses where people were sharing their stories and insights, and it didn't matter where they came from. I mean, we had John Jackson, who's the president of William Jessup University, but he's also an entrepreneur by background, had great insights. We had John Pearson and his buddy Mike Pate, and they do different types of leadership consulting, but they specifically focus on nonprofit boards. And then we had a variety of other entrepreneurs, but each one, those leadership lessons go across virtually any industry once again. And I think what I'm looking to do is I plan to do more preparation and try to ask some questions without letting the guests know in advance to really pull out some additional information. Last time, we kind of went with the flow. We let them talk. We asked them to tell stories, which I still want that. But I want to ask some more specifics and, try to get them talking a little bit outside of their script, outside of what maybe they are typically saying, to try to give the audience more insights and more things to consider of, maybe if I tried that might actually help me improve in that area. So that's my thought.
Yeah, we also had Curtis Crum. I liked having Curtis on.
Kurt's a great guy.
What is I forget his title again. It's he works with the Boise PD.
He is, Boise, Idaho Police Department. I first met him in prison fellowship back in 1980 or something like that.
Was that at San Quentin?
Well, I was doing cell-to-cell ministry in San Quentin, and then he came in and he was organizing prison fellowship for the first time in the San Francisco Bay Area because I was one of the early people that was involved. He asked me to be the leader of the volunteers, or I don't know what he called me, but I was the layman who was heading up the Bay Area. And we worked together for a year or two, whatever it was. Just a great guy. Now he does a lot of work in the juvenile department, I believe, with Boise, but he also does a lot of training. And actually, we need to double back with him because we were going to work with him on a training for Dave's Charm School.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. And he has this regular training he does, and he was happy to work with us to provide that. And it's a really good one. It's for companies. And I forget what it had to do with, but it was very valuable. We need to double back. So have you invited him to a future one? Another podcast?
Not yet. I sent out about 10 invites for the first set, and we're booked into February now. So we're filling up. But I'll be sure to send him an invite in the next batch that I do. I'm going to do that.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, he's super good guy. I'm sure he's got some new insights for us, and we could even talk about that course a little bit.
Yeah,
get it teed up. So that'd be great.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. And just so I know the listeners who listen to the No Bad Bosses podcast before, you can expect to hear a number of our guests from the previous podcast we'll be inviting on, but we're also going to be inviting on some new guests. And that leads into my next question, which was going to be the next topic for this is who would be your dream podcast guests, people you would love to talk to?
You asking me?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, I think that there are. I think there's some people that would be great. That, from my perspective, would be great. I think Mark Battleson, who wrote Chase the Lion, I believe, and he also wrote what was it? In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day. That was his prior one that led up to it. He'd be really interesting to talk to. He heads up a large church in Washington, D.C.
What's the gist of that book? I've heard you mention that a couple times.
Yeah, it's about having the courage to go after something big and not be afraid.
In a pit with a lion on a snowy day.
Yeah, so okay. It's a very short verse in the Bible that Benaiah, son of Zehudiah or something like that, was a mighty warrior
God
of
bless you.
Whatever. Yeah, that's about it. And it says he killed two of Moab's best men, and he also chased the lion into a pit on a snowy day and killed it.
Wow.
And when Mark saw that, he's like, "That's a book I'm going to write." Just by that thing. And he's built this whole thing. If you look up Chase the Lion, he's got videos on YouTube. I read his book, Chase the Lion. It's great. I got lots of highlights. He also has some really cool posters with, backgrounds of a lion. But it's about, don't be afraid. If you're called to do something big, don't keep telling yourself, I'm not good enough. I can't do that. I don't have the time, whatever. Go after it. And so he'd be fun. Of course, Pat Lencioni, I don't know whether we could ever get him on. I mean, he
seems like a popular guy.
$1,000 to just, go do a talk. But he's just a super guy. I mean, he's a great human being is the impression you have. So he would be a lot of fun to have on. And I think those are two people that come to mind. There's some other authors that have some interesting stuff, maybe. I can't think of any politicians I'd like to have on, although I wish we had a leader that was interesting enough to have on that was a politician. But those types of people, actually, there are some cool people that do some things on the fringes of politics. But I don't know whether we want to do that. But it is a leadership thing, so it might come up.
Maybe this podcast we talked about before having it more open to different topics and different guests, and kind of broadening the scope, which I know we're both excited about. So who knows? Maybe someday along the line we would have someone who is in the political sphere that might be interesting too. Hey, we could grill them with some hard questions about why things are not the way perhaps we would like them to be.
Yeah, and that's a possibility. The other thing is we may go local. I mean, I was talking with the local middle school principal here, a really cool guy, Jim Larson, and he mentioned a guy who's working with an elementary school and trying to provide mentors for a local elementary school that has like 75% of the kids are below the poverty line. And so it might be interesting to talk with that guy about what are you seeing with these kids? What's happening with education? What can be done to help people who maybe aren't getting the same opportunity as other kids at any level. It could be elementary school, middle school, high school, college, whatever. So you kind of level the playing field. How do you do that? Because that's a complicated question, and that affects your workforce as a leader in the future. So it might be something, some companies would want to get behind and maybe support, maybe locally, because long-term, that's going to help their workforce, and they're going to, improve the people that come to them and want a job someday. I don't know. But, I like the way you wanted to keep it open.
Yeah.
And so we can kind of see how the flow goes. I would suggest that might be something that's a regular thing we encourage our audience to do is, hey, if you want us to interview somebody, hey, we'll go ask anybody, right? Just about.
Yeah. Well, if it grows in popularity, I can imagine we would get some requests like that, which would be very cool.
Yeah. So that'd be fun. I mean, we can go ask, say our audience is asking for you. Why don't you come on? And so.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. For me, I've been reading, I grabbed this. Can you see it? Is it for me?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. David,
I love that book.
I've really been enjoying it. It's super fun. So having like Malcolm Gladwell come on and talk to us. I also have Blink. I found Blink in $1.99 for. I've been going to Goodwill and searching for the books there. I also found this one, How Soccer Explains the World. That's on my book list.
Oh, okay, there we go.
And actually, I'll keep going. Jordan Peterson. I found 12 Rules for Life when we were shopping for school supplies for Bella the other day.
And who is Jordan Peterson?
Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist and a professor at the University of Toronto. And he's been very popular in the past couple of years because in the social sphere, because he found a law. He started making a YouTube channel and posting some of his lectures, and people liked that, and he appreciated that. But he really blew up when I believe some locality, or Canada as a whole, I believe it was some locality, passed a law that mandated the use of specific gender pronouns based on the recipient of who was being referred to. So if somebody wanted to be called whatever, I think there's Z's or whatever, Canada was basically saying in this law, a part of Canada was saying in this law that you had to call them by whatever they preferred, or else it was a hate crime or something like that. I don't know. I'm not an expert.
Yeah, that's why I recognize him. I think I saw that, or you sent it to me or something.
Yeah.
I recognized the name. I was like, there's something here. But that'd be a great guy to have on.
Oh, I would love to have him on because he's super interesting. I think he's grown in popularity so much that he's kind of talking on a lot of topics that he's not necessarily an expert on right now. And he's trying to be very careful about that, which I respect him for. But he grew to popularity because he opposed that law. And he said, he seems like he's studied the issues of oppression and war. And he's a clinical psychologist, so he's naturally studied a lot of psychological issues and people. And he just presented a very specific argument against the law that I think a lot of people liked. And so his book is kind of blew up, and I saw it on the shelf at Target, so I had to get that. So
I think it's great. And when you bring up Gladwell's book about David and Goliath, or whatever that it's called, but he has a totally different perspective than I had ever seen on that fight between David and Goliath. Yeah. And that's the thing I remember from the book. And I think that really calls back to leadership and some of the things you and I have been working on lately, of the rut that leaders get stuck in, where, they're like, I only have this perspective, and they got blinders on.
Right.
I can't do it, don't have time, don't have the resources, whatever. And my argument is, no, it's not important enough for you to change, because it's more comfortable for you to operate like this in your little box.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. And Gladwell takes apart that whole David versus Goliath thing, which doesn't diminish David's courage or what he accomplished.
Oh, yeah.
But it gives you a totally different perspective. And that's what you need to do. It's like, hey, wait a minute, remove the blinders. And like, oh, I could do this differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to get leaders to do, I think, through this podcast is, hey, where's an idea that'll resonate with you? And you'll say, oh, wow, that'll hit you. It's kind of like when you're reading a book, or like I'm reading my Bible, and a verse or a statement jumps off the page.
Right.
And it's like, oh, wow, that hits me. I need to think about that. I need to focus on that. And I think that's what I'm trying to do with you in this podcast. I think we'll do it better together than me doing the majority of talking and you being behind the curtain.
Yeah. I think it's good to have multiple voices in there. And as we've worked together, we've definitely experienced that we have different personalities and different takes on things. And it'll be good to hash those out and kind of bring different. I saw that. I'm really liking David and Goliath. About how halfway through it. It's on my book list for this year. And one thing, I don't know if you remember, I've been asking everybody. So I got through this. I don't want to give away too much in the book, but there's one section that has the shortest IQ test in the world. Do you remember that?
No, it rings a bell, but I don't remember what it is.
So maybe you'll get it when I ask the first question. There's 3 questions, but I'll only ask you the first one. So here's the first question that in the shortest IQ test in the world. I asked everybody at the gym. I go to the climbing gym in Santa Monica called Rock Creation. It's a great place. Anybody wants to go. But I asked everybody there, and it's so fun to watch the different answers that come from this question. So here you go. Here's the question.
I know I'm going to fail. Go ahead. Yeah.
I messed up the first time too. So a bat and a ball together cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? That's usually everybody's reaction at first too. Don't worry, it's complete silence.
Like too simple.
I know, right? And that's the thing.
It's like
right?
Too simple. So what's the trick?
Well, it is not a trick. It's simply the way the question is phrased and designed. It seems one way at first. Your first answer probably wants to be, oh, the ball is 10 cents because that would mean the bat's $1. And there was a word in there that said it's $1 more than the ball. So that makes sense to me. Almost everybody says, oh, it's 10 cents. Of course. But wait a minute. They all forget the first sentence in the question, which is a bat and a ball. Or wait. They forget the second sentence. The bat is $1 more than the ball. So if the ball is 10 cents and the bat's $1, that's only 90 cents more than the ball. That's not $1 more than the ball. So it has to be $1 more. Everybody gets caught up on this. I started thinking about it. And I noticed that at first. I said 10 cents. Okay, that doesn't make sense. So I give myself some credit here. And I said, that doesn't make any sense, but it would have to be $1 more than the ball. So my thinking went, okay, so if the ball was 1 cent, then the bat would have to be $1.01. But my thinking didn't go further and say, no, that doesn't count because it's only $1.02 combined. So I went through this whole thing. I eventually settled within a frame of a few seconds reading through the question. I settled on, okay, well, it can be anywhere from $1.01 to $1.10. But I didn't go the next length to say, wait a minute, it has to equal total $1.10.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example of what Malcolm Gladwell is trying to illustrate in the book, is that things are not always what they seem, and that we need to look deeper into the problem to figure it out. So
yeah.
Have you figured out?
And the answer is $1.05.
That's right.
Yeah, but I did not figure that out. I would have failed it.
Yeah. No,
I was just thinking, it sounds too easy. What am I missing? And I missed it.
There were 3 people who got it right away. One guy, I don't know. His name is Sean. He got it right away. I don't know why. The other guy actually is also named Sean, who a good friend of mine. Yeah. I texted him and a few other friends, and he was the one to come back right away. It's 5 cents. That's right up his alley, though. He's the guy that didn't study for calculus tests and aced them. And then the other person is, I forget her name, but she works at Rock Creation, and she immediately, when I said I was asking questions in a group, she said, "Do you have problems?" "Oh, I love problems." And it's like so excited to answer these questions. Everyone was interested, but she was really excited. And I asked her the 3 questions. She got all of them right off the bat. Boom, boom.
Oh, wow.
And and her name is Lucy. She's a math major. Go figure.
Yeah.
All the questions are pretty math related. So anyway,
and what does she do there?
She works there. She works she does some of the training there. She works at the front desk.
Maybe we should have her as a guest because she's so smart and got the 3 questions. And ask her what she would like to have in a boss that she doesn't have in a boss.
Right? Yeah. We
hasn't had a boss.
How did you get these questions right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No, she seems very intelligent. I think it's just because they're math questions. It was right up her alley, and she seemed to like trivia questions too, kind of like that. So go figure. I had one of the goalkeepers at USF was like that too. He would put math questions on the board in the locker room, and we would all look at him. We're like, "We're not math majors. Like, why are you asking us this? We're stupid. We're never going to get this." And then he would explain it to us.
I don't know about stupid, but
well, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we went through podcast guests that we want to have on. Which businesses and people do you admire and why? This kind of ties in, not necessarily podcast guests you would like to have on, but are there any businesses and people you admire you want to emulate and why?
Um,
I can start off if you want me to.
Yeah, you go ahead.
So you already know this, but I talk about Basecamp all the time. Jason Fried, I don't know if it's pronounced Fried or Fried. And
spelled Fried.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
David Heinemeier Hansen, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Those two co-founders, I just really like their perspective. If anybody who doesn't know anything about Basecamp, they make a project management app called Basecamp. They've written 2 or 3 books now, including Rework and their most recent one, which should be on my list. I'm going to add that to my book list. It's called It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work. I just really like their business philosophy. They're very straightforward, very buck the trends and curves of the traditional business world. They swear in all their blog posts. They don't even care. They're just like, this is us. This is what we're going to do. No fluff. I remember one thing from their books that I loved was they said they did not like the phrase, sorry for the inconvenience, or we apologize for the inconvenience. They were like, this is a nonsense phrase. This doesn't mean anything. Inconvenience is so general. I forget exactly what they said, but I just loved it because it was very real. It was very, you felt like there was no pretense. And they said, instead, just say sorry. Just say the word. Just say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And that was all. And that was just one of the things that I remember specifically about them. And I appreciate reading their blog at Signal versus Noise. And they're one of the companies I admire.
Okay, that's great. And you mentioned them. I think they've got a lot of good stuff going on. I don't know whether I qualify with this one, but if I'm looking at your kind of what businesses and people, I focus more on the people side. And I think that relating back to how I'm trying to shake up leaders and have them think differently. So, I mean, for me, it's more thinking of people who've done significant things that really kind of in many ways changed the world. So I think of President Theodore Roosevelt. I think of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I think of my mind's going blank. South African leader was in prison for 20.
Mandela, Nelson
Mandela. I think of Abraham Lincoln. I think of people who made tough decisions. I mean, Mandela, he made a tough decision that he wasn't going to be bitter. I mean, that's not an easy decision. Roosevelt seemed to make tough decisions almost easily. Abraham Lincoln, I mean, here he was, failure, president, Right. You go through his list. You look at Florence Nightingale and how she had to fight to clean up hospitals and the impact that made. So I guess, I don't know, I use some of these not all of them, but some of these in examples when I talk about leadership and the legacy. And I think those are the people that are inspiring me right now as far as businesses. I have a lot of businesses, that I respect, but right now I really can't think of one that I would choose as an example. So.
Well, that says something about the business atmosphere today and the industries and companies that are prevalent. I mean, there've been over the years, certainly businesses that people really like. There's been a lot of raving Apple fans, even when they were hitting their lows in the 90s. And now today some of them might be falling off, but yeah.
Well, it's a different Apple.
Yeah.
In many ways. And you look at Google, where a lot of people like Google, and yet you got a whole nother camp that doesn't like Google and thinks they're tracking too much data and doing whatever. And you got Facebook people love it. Facebook people hate it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of divergence there, and some of it in each situation based on truth, and some of it based on assumption or, some other type of belief. But I don't know. It's a little more complicated. More complicated. I say, one thing that came up in a conversation recently was talking about stewardship, financial stewardship, and how you manage that as a leader, where so many company leaders today are paid in my view, excessively. You know, you have shareholders and you go and pay yourself $100 million for 1 year's work.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be serving shareholders. And, you know, I said that I really had a lot of respect for Rick Warren of Saddleback Church. He doesn't get paid anything from the church. Now, he makes probably millions on his books and his other stuff.
Oh,
you know, having written Purpose Driven Life, it's like the second most published book separate of the Bible in the world ever.
Oh, really?
But here's a guy who chose that he's going to live on 10% of that income and give away 90% of it. Whatever that is. I don't, you know, under that formula, if he still makes $100 million a year, how can I fault that? You know,
yeah, it's kind of tough.
Yeah, I mean, I just got tremendous respect for that as an attitude as a leader. And I'm not saying Rick Warren's perfect. Nobody's perfect. I don't know Rick. I'm sure he's got flaws. You know, he's had ups and downs, but I really appreciate that type of approach that focuses so much on trying your best to serve others and living that out. So that's what I like.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think I read something at one point that talked about the culture of CEO pay in Japan. I found it very interesting because there's a
got to be very different.
It seemed like there's a big difference. Yeah, it's more about honor and respect than it is about making as much money as possible. You know, there's a competitive environment, but if a Japanese CEO, it was rare, I believe the article said that a Japanese CEO would make more than the equivalent of $500,000 a year. And it just blows your mind when you think about how much, you know, the CEOs in the United States and elsewhere make, and they're always jockeying for more pay here and there.
It's obscene.
Yeah, I might be incorrect. Perhaps there's, you know, maybe maybe it's even the wrong country that I'm thinking of. Maybe I read the wrong thing, but I'm pretty sure that there's some country out there that has a culture like that, and I think that's admirable.
Yeah. So let me tie on to the comment you were just making, Jeff.
Sure.
So I want to bring up two. We talked about politicians, nobody to really admire. I want to go back to one you admired years ago, Ron Paul. And I bought his book. I mean, Ron Paul. What?
Which book?
What he did? He wrote back then. It was like The Revolution or whatever he was writing. It's on my shelf here. I know somewhere.
Liberty, a manifesto.
Yeah, it's up there, I think. But the thing I like about now Ron Paul, I don't know how effective he was in Congress because he's kind of an absolutist. It's kind of like my way or the highway.
Dr. No.
However, I think the great appeal of Ron Paul was that as a leader, you think of leadership, you knew he was honest. You knew that he couldn't be bought. You knew that what he believed based on the investigation he had done. If you wanted to disagree with him based on the facts, that's fine. But it was somebody you could trust. And I think that's a big thing that's missing in leadership today and probably be explored from time to time in these different podcasts that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I was and am a fan of Ron Paul. And I think he mirrors, interestingly enough, he is mirrored by Bernie Sanders in many ways on the more liberal side, in that they're both unique. And I admire both of them for being, from what I understand, relatively principled, and they're out front with their beliefs and their opinions, and they're not going to sweet talk issues and mull over different policy positions that they don't really believe in. They've done their research, they've stated they're set in their beliefs, and they, you know, may take in new information and change as needed. But they don't, because they've done a lot of preparation, and they are passionate about these issues enough to care enough to do the research on them. And that's why people are so, that's why they have such passionate fans. And I think I totally agree with you. There's not a lot of politicians I would like to have on. Even Ron Paul's son, Rand Paul, seems to try to make nice a little bit more and play the political game, to seem to try and pursue some of the same principles, but it's not as inspiring because
it's not.
there's a little there's the political game playing, which may work, which may get things done. That's another fault that you could bring to these.
Well, we don't have time in this podcast to go there, but
yeah.
And I think I think the other thing you have to realize that we have to realize as leaders is that somebody like that, you bring up Sanders and we bring up Ron Paul. It's you also have to look at is are they really interpreting the facts the way we would interpret them? I mean, Ron Paul, I think, wanting smaller government, I think his math adds up a lot better than Bernie, where you have bleeding deficits left and right, and he wants to still expand everything. But as you say, they're true to what they believe in. So at least you can say, well, do I disagree with this guy or not? At least I know where that stand for.
Right.
Versus the games Trump plays, or Hillary plays, or even a guy like Mitt Romney who came on the news the other day condemning Trump. It's like, Mitt, you had some success in business, but in politics, in 2012 election, you flip-flopped so many times.
Yeah.
It was like, how can we elect this guy? We won't even know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
It was sickening.
And it's painfully obvious. You can tell. Yeah, I agree. You painfully obvious that Mitt Romney, either in many of the debates, was not prepared, or simply hasn't settled on the principles that he believes in. And that's the thing that's powerful. It's the principles behind Bernie's ideas and opinions that are really powerful. You say this guy has a foundation that he's going off of, and that's not going to change because some donor gives him, $1 million here and there. He believes this.
Yeah,
it comes from the heart rather than a place of selfishness.
Yeah, and there are probably people who can argue that Mitt is smarter.
Definitely seems very intelligent.
Maybe or Ron Paul. I mean, Mitt's a super smart guy.
Yeah.
And he's had some tremendous success. But when it came to politics, as you say, he hadn't really nailed down, this is what I stand for, I'm going to stay true to it. He was swayed by whatever. Anyway, so why don't we wrap, where are we going now? We're going to.
Yeah. Okay. So the last question I wanted to ask, what are your goals for 2019? The last discussion item. I have a few, but I was, wanted to put it out there, ask you, what are your goals? It can be business or it can be personal. Maybe.
You want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
All right.
So I've been actually creating a list here of my goals for 2019. I don't want to call them resolutions. Goals is fine. And mine are, last year I read, you can see them right there. I read 13 books, I think. And so my goal this year, after reading, I got to give a shout out to the Art of Manliness podcast and the Art of Manliness.com, because it's one of the sites I like visiting. They have great articles, and it's a podcast I enjoy listening to. And one of the articles there was, why you need a reading plan, basically. Last year, I was kind of just picking up books, and I have for years, just pick up books and, oh, that looks great, I'll read that. Oh, that looks awesome, I'll read that. And now I have this, based on this article, I'm developing a reading list, and I want to read a minimum of 25 books this year, and I'm working on my reading list. So that's one of my goals for this year.
Okay.
I also have some pretty simple goals, like surfing a different spot here and there, or climbing a different spot. I want to go to climb in Joshua Tree, which is 2.5 hours away. I want to surf in Steamer Lane in Santa Cruz. And I want to attend at least one Toastmasters meeting. There's a guy who's a Ukrainian guy that goes to the gym, and he's been going to Toastmasters to try and better his English. And I thought that was awesome. And it reminded me that I always wanted. Yeah. Oh yeah. He says they're awesome. So I want to try that. And then that's pretty much it. I'm still working on kind of my goals. Obviously I have some business goals and work goals, but those are my personal goals right now today. But I think I'm going to add a couple more, because more keep popping into my head. I've been thinking about it for a couple months.
Well, of course, I teach how to write target goals. And so I'm going to do something I've never done before, being asked this question. Basically, I'll say to the audience that I am focusing on one word for 2019, and that word is courage, partially inspired by Chase the Lion. And so when we meet again in a year, I'm going to tell you what that's accomplished in my life, because I want to do some things I've been afraid to do. I want to do some things that I haven't done in professionally and personally. And so come back in a year and you can see how courage played out in the specifics of what I'm going to go after this year and how well I did. And I'll be candid on that.
That's a cliffhanger. That's good. Yeah. Yeah. What's the word? There's another word for it, but cliffhanger I'll have to do.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Well, that wraps it up for our first podcast. And look forward. We already have 6 or 7 guests scheduled for the next upcoming podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, check it out every week. We'll try and do it. This day is Wednesday at 10. We'll try and do Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific time. But, things may get rescheduled, but we're trying to do one a week. And we look forward to doing more and interviewing a whole range of guests. And we look forward to you joining us.
Cool. Well, thanks for all you do, Jeff. And thanks for the audience for tuning in. And we're going to work hard to make these valuable for you. So whether you can watch the video or listen to the MP3 file, whatever, or, we think it's worth your time. And please give us candid feedback on how we can get better for you.
Awesome.